Let's talk about the positive use of power, the legitimation of power, and non-authoritarian power. Power is legitimate when you make it legitimate. It's very important to recognize that power does have a useful utility to it. Despite the distaste of the word or the resistance of the activities implied, it is a very important piece of your work as a supervisor to accept without defensiveness or apology, and it's an authority that's inherent in the position that you have, and you need to be able to use it effectively and recognize that it's not a negative. Non-authoritarian authority is an interesting concept itself, and that is to get people to do things voluntarily or things that they need to do, because they desire doing it. Supervisees can more easily understand and accept the exercise of authority if it's clear that it's being used to achieve organizational goals rather than because it's intrinsically pleasurable to the supervisor. So what you try to do is get people to be committed to the job that needs to be done and work with you as part of a team. And sometimes that becomes very effective and a good tool in doing that. So people do need to have buy-in in order for that to occur. Problems in the implementation of supervisory authority. Three different problems that have been identified in our readings in the text. The avoidance and the abdication of authority and the power of supervisors. Some supervisors avoid utilizing their power or authority and don't assume this particular responsibility. When you do that, you can have problems. And again, I reflect on the principle or the doctrine of vicarious liability. So you need to be aware of that. You need to not abdicate that authority as a supervisor. And they gave some examples of mid-level management positions where some people talk about having difficulties telling people what to do, or they don't want to confront their staff, or they hate to reprimand. They avoid issues and they think that things are going to go away, and it's not going to happen that way. It just doesn't occur. Right? Organizational factors attenuating supervisory power and authority. The resistance and avoidance in the exercise of administrative authority by supervisors may be partially a consequence of that the vicarious exercise of power and authority is antithetical to social work values or values that you may have in the organization, or sometimes the resistance that you may have, and that you may not necessarily have the power or authority that you believe or perceive to have. Sometimes you may use vague language in expressing yourself, or you give supervisees too much discretion in terms of doing things when they want to do things, and that can pose a problem and difficulty. Supervisee countervailing power. Well, the supervisor's authority and power is not limited only by ideology, reluctance, and organizational considerations, but also countervailing power of supervisees. The concept that power is ultimately based on dependency might be useful in analyzing countervailing power of supervisees. You need to be, this is an interesting reading, knowing that the supervisor in this concept, and they bring out some interesting points. The power of the individual supervisee in terms of controlling workflow, or not doing work, and avoiding work that needs to be done. Supervisors controlling the use of the power of the supervisor by appealing to the norms of fairness, collegiality, we're friends, professional behavior, that kind of thing. You need to be able to recognize that this can occur and not to allow this to happen. Does anyone have any other examples of problems in the implementation of supervisory authority? This slide talks about the problems of rules, non-compliance, and disciplinary action. Do the rules make sense? Is there a functional value of the rules, okay, that you're being asked to implement in the organization? You need to be aware of this, and you need to be able to discuss these rules and how there is a purpose and how there is a function within these particular rules. You need to believe in them. You need to be able to have belief that that they do make sense. Okay, and as a supervisor, you have a responsibility to recognize the functionality of rules. You also have a responsibility to understand non-compliance of the worker. Why is the worker resistant, and what is it in their behavior that's forcing them or saying that they don't want to comply? It may be they may have non-compliance because they don't understand the rules. They may have non-compliance because they disagree with the policy or the procedure. They may be non-compliant because they have conflict between bureaucratic demands and casework goals as perceived by the supervisee. There may be that conflict. You need to understand, what is the nature of the non-compliance and how do you get work done. You also, as a supervisor, have the responsibility of monitoring non-compliance and keeping people on task as you monitor this non-compliance, and understanding that the worker's behavior is not the same as understanding the worker's behavior doesn't mean you excuse it or excuse the work that needs to be done. You need to be able to recognize what is happening, what is going on, and then get the worker to do the job. And then lastly, you need to be able to take disciplinary action when necessary and not be shy about doing that when it needs to be done. You do it in compliance with agency policies, rules, and procedures, and you need to recognize that non-compliance is an exception. There is a lot of energy that can be spent in terms of getting people to do things and understanding non-compliance, and what would be the steps that are necessary to take in getting in disciplining a worker. It's probably best to go through a progressive process in most instances, even with serious instances, recognizing whether it's a training issue or a performance issue, and how do you separate out these different points. The readings for the assignments for week 5 are Chapter 4 of Kedushin and Shulman Chapter 3. As a reminder, please don't remember that your first journal assignment is due next week. I do want to say that Chapter 4, in my opinion, is perhaps the most interesting chapter of all. Chapter 3 and Chapters 2 and 3 are the most difficult pieces that you as a supervisor have to perform, and that is the administrative piece. The most enjoyable piece is the educational function of the supervisor.